It's 4 o'clock. Welcome to Montana's only statewide sports talk show. Broadcast on 102.9 ESPN radio for Western Montana and across the state on SWX television.
I like football!
Now, the 2017 Radio Sports Broadcaster of the Year on the show with back-to-back Montana Broadcaster Association awards for sports coverage and award-winning sports journalism. Here is Ryan Tootell and Colter Nuanez.
Hello, Montana. Game 7. 2 hours away. And a legend hangs them up in Missoula. It is Tootell and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. We are broadcasting to you live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy, online at kurtzpolaris.com. If you'd like to find us, well, we're there on your radios, on your televisions, on SWX Montana, on the internet, 1029ESPN.com via the stream. The stream is there thanks to Opportunity Bank, your local bank, your opportunity. We're also there on YouTube. Hello, YouTube TV. What is going on? I keep saying that. I fail to recall. YouTube TV is a thing, and it is distinct from this thing. We're on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel. Seems like YouTube TV. Also, you can call. What about that? 329-1899, the phone number. 329-1899, the phone number. All guests join us via the Rangich Brothers RV phone line. In the show today, yes, of all the days to get into a little bit of hockey, for crying out loud, Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final, you kidding me? Bruins, Blues in Boston at 6 o'clock. Coming up on it, we're going to talk about this game a little bit, people. Have to. Going to get into the United States women's national team. Going to get into Kevin Durant a little bit, maybe talk some U.S. Open. Brooks Koepka having some things to say. Effectively, his line is this: if you think the course is set up poorly, it's because you're not good at golf. That's the short version, the truncated version of what Brooks Koepka had to say. And he was on my list of – I don't know if he was on my list of guys that I didn't like, but he was way off of my list of top 3 guys that I do like. He's climbing the list, Colter. I must say,
ironic.
You're coming around.
Usually you don't like the tough guy shtick.
No. I mean, if it's a shtick, then yeah, I don't like it. We'll get into it. Just give me some time. And also, yeah, it's a Wing It Wednesday today, boys and girls. Got some wings for you from the Desperado Sports Tavern, perhaps a shirt if you're really good. Bunch of trivia questions, so we're going to get through all of this today. A spectacular Wednesday out there in the wide world. Coulter, how we doing over there? You feeling good? You got your sailboat
Good. It's definitely
shirt
an interesting day around here, Missoula Broadcasting. So first of all, I got to ask you, how did you feel after the show last night? Because as you probably heard, I'm already sniffling. I'm getting a little bit of your allergies. How'd you feel?
Went home, sat down, passed out.
I figured that was the case. I actually was at the studio till about 7:45 last night, and I thought maybe I'll stop by Ryan's house and see the kids, and I was like, now Ryan's sleeping.
Yeah, well, I did a couple things. I washed my trailer, which I got for $1. I mowed my lawn. Yeah.
What trailer?
My yellow trailer. I have a beautiful yellow trailer. Fully enclosed.
What do you mean?
Nice.
Like with a bed in it?
No, it's small. It's almost like a camping trailer, but it's a hitch deal. It's like a tow.
What are you doing it? You sleep in it?
No. Well, I mean, actually, you could if you wanted to, but it's for things. It's for
just towing around.
It's South African. Okay, it's unique. It's unique. You will not find one in the United States. I've got one, and I'm very happy to have it because it's a very simple way to take things with you if you're going to go camp out, but you don't camp in it. It's not a camper. It's a trailer.
It's like my brother always makes fun of us for 2 things. First of all, acquiring possessions that help you hoard more possessions and moving your possessions around your living space. Just you're moving them around. Like, this is better here because it's more organized if this is here as opposed to here, even though it's 11 feet apart in the same house.
And how it would be actually organized if this wasn't here at all.
Right.
Brooks, shout out, bud. I'm with you.
Fascinating.
He's married. He's got children. He knows. He knows the struggle.
Oh, yeah.
And then I mowed my lawn, by the way, to finish up about me. It's about me, Coulter, and all the good things that I got done.
Great.
And then I fell asleep.
Great. Well, I was just asking because I just didn't know if I should explore the allergy meds, but I don't think I should.
I took one today earlier, not a Benadryl, a different thing, so hopefully I'll be awake and alert. I got my Joseph here. I'm feeling good.
Definitely an interesting day here at Missoula Broadcasting Company, though. I know we're going to talk a little bit more about it later on in the show, but Craig Johnson, happy trails. Last day on the trail, Missoula radio legend. What did he say, 46 years total in the business?
Yep. He maybe a teenager, 18, 19 years old. I mean, his first job out of high school was radio.
Yeah, I was thinking about this morning as he was broadcasting what was an absolutely epic final show.
Unbelievable.
Go check it out on the Trail podcast.
Yep. Phenomenal.
I mean,
show.
I don't think we even ran any ads. It was just Craig talking and telling stories and playing music.
Surprise guests coming in. His
Everybody.
brother from Minnesota surprised him in studio. Very poignant moment. His wife stopped by. We even got our boss to get on the radio, which is
first time in 30 years, I think she said.
Never happens. So, I mean, it's difficult to understand her accent from time to time, but she is very, very kind and was sweet on the radio today.
I love it. Well, shout out to Craig. It was a great day. I know we're going to get into it a little bit more later on in the show, but I was thinking it's a truly unique situation to have a guy of his talent be able to go out on his own terms in a market the size of, but also as revering as Missoula is. It's a one-of-a-kind situation, honestly, because guys like Craig, they don't stick around in a place like Missoula. Not that Missoula's a great, phenomenal place. Craig is a top-level talent. He could have been anywhere in the country.
Well, he was. He went to Los Angeles. He went to Portland and he
said he lasted 6 months, hated it, and he's out.
Got to get out, yeah.
Regardless, to be able to do what he did and go out on your own terms, it's very impressive, very inspiring, and I know we both idolize Craig a lot, and he's one of our favorite humans, period, and we wish him the best.
Certainly we do. Yeah, it's been a joy to work with him for these past 5 years. We got on board here within weeks, certainly maybe a couple of months of each other, and he will certainly be missed. It does. I've always loved radio. Radio has been my medium of choice. Going back. And continues to be, and I recognize the innate bias in the statement given my situation now. But
I think you and I are both similar in that aspect, though, because neither one of us grew up wanting to be radio hosts, despite the fact that we love what we do now.
Right, and I mean,
I never thought this would be my job until it became my job. I didn't think it was my job for a second until I started doing the show with you.
Yeah, well, I had an inkling a little before this, but you're right. I mean, it wasn't necessarily out there right away for me either. But once you do it for a while, I mean, it is just like anything. I enjoy this every single day. I get a complete kick out of doing this every single day. But you do it every single day, the exception, of course, of gross amounts of vacation that I take. And so there's a routine to it. I don't want to say I take it for granted. I don't think that I do, but it is a routine because it does happen daily. I mean, it's habituated work, right? People understand what I'm saying on this, and so then to see a guy who's done it for longer than we've both been alive, he's been at this thing doing it, and through a truly golden era of radio DJing. I mean, that what he's done, isn't coming back around, and in terms of the style, the way that it's done, and he did it right all the way through, the right way all the way to the end. And then, you walk in here, you go, this is cool. This is cool to be able to sit down here, talk on this microphone, shake the ether, move the electromagnetic radiation around, and have other people go, oh, yeah, sports in Missoula, Montana, sports in, the state of Montana, and in Bozeman when you're out there, on the big deal, on the TV sets. That's great. I mean, it's fun. It's truly fun to do, but also, you get a new sort of appreciation for what it is that we get to do when you see a guy like that do what he's done and how much he's, just deeply appreciated and cared for by everybody.
Treat people right, the universe will reciprocate it. It's a great lesson Craig Johnson sets for us all. We'll get more into it. Couple segments. So let's talk about the Stanley Cup final. I was reading a little bit about it, but the cliche is that there's no better Game 7 in all of sports than in hockey, and now we have a Game 7 in hockey in the final.
Yeah.
And in Boston, one of the original 6 franchises. So I think as far as setting the scene, I'm interested. I you know this. I love hockey. I just find it so hard to filter out storylines because, for better or worse, there's just a lot less drama than there is in the other professional sports.
When I moved back to Missoula, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, whatever it was, and now Missoula's my hometown, okay, and I grew up, going to Montana and Montana State games and all that, throughout my youth. And I would follow, I've watched every Cat Grizz game since I was cognizant of Cat Grizz, and football and all that kind of stuff. Tune in, pay attention, see what's going on. But I was gone out of the state of Montana, at times out of the country, for over a decade.
Sure.
When I came back here, the learning curve to know the ins and outs of who, what, both at Montana and Montana State and the Big Sky Conference in general, took time. It took a while to get acclimated again to what was going on, and you don't just absorb it when you're not here, because at this level, you have to either be there or dial into it in order to get it. It's not just coming to you on SportsCenter, every evening on ESPN.
Totally.
So, my point is that hockey is like that.
The fact
hockey
that
doesn't just come to you. You have to go to it at this point.
That's the hardest part for me, is that, even when you're flipping through the channels, I don't even know if we get the channel that the normal, regular season hockey's on.
Yeah, I mean, NBCSN.
We have a special cable package that only has 10 channels. I don't think we get that one.
I don't think that's the special cable package.
Well, the grab bag. That's what we call it.
The grab bag, I guess so.
I mean special not in the fact that it's extravagant. I mean special in the fact that no one else gets to have 10 channels.
Okay.
My roommate strong-armed him and give us the 10 channels we want.
Okay. Good for him.
Most people got to pay for the 400 channels they don't want to get the 10 channels they want.
If you've ever taken a walk, though, down those channels, you're like, I wonder what Blaze TV is. I wonder what GTV is. And you're all of a sudden going, man, there's a lot of programming that's made that just 7 people have ever watched. You know what I mean? It's unbelievable. All the old Westerns, they're out there. A bunch of religious television. That's a whole giant, bandwidth.
Then there's these good-looking guys on.
And then here we are.
Cable TV.
Yeah, forget.
You're talking about random programming. Here we are, creating it.
Game 7, Coulter, tonight. I believe, now don't quote me on this, I think this is the 19th Game 7 of a Stanley Cup final in the history.
Interesting, good stat.
Now, and again, don't check me on that. I may be off on that, but I think that's right. I have some things for you about this particular game, this particular matchup. The Blues are the 6th team in Stanley Cup history, Stanley Cup final history, to lose Game 6 at home. Of those, then that would go back, obviously, to a Game 7 on the road. Only one team, the 1945 Toronto Maple Leafs, actually won that Game 7 on the road. So what St. Louis is trying to do, at least in this sort of minuscule respect, has only been done once before in 6 attempts.
I believe that the Maple Leafs are the only NHL team with a longer Stanley Cup Finals appearance drought than the St. Louis Blues. I think that 1945 was the last time the Maple Leafs won and or played in the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, that may be. I think they may have been in one in the 60s somewhere, but I think you're right about that.
It's the longest streak in the NFL. The Blues had the second longest streak until this year. They had not been in the Stanley Cup since 1970.
And by the way, a very interesting commentary about why you see what you see with the Raptors. I mean, the sport of Canada is hockey, and Toronto is, the heart of Canadian hockey, and they've been good at times. They've been awful at other times, but they have not been ultimately good. And
right. Well, and they're not.
Canadians,
and I was going to say they're not the Canadians, and they're not the Oilers. So therefore, they have been getting wiped off the map in terms of Stanley Cups during the modern generation. I mean, the Canadians and the Oilers have won probably 35 Stanley Cups combined. I mean, don't the Canadians have like 26 or 27 Stanley Cups?
Yeah, the Canadians have the most Stanley Cups in of any franchise. I don't know.
I think they have the most championships in American professional sports.
More than the Yanks?
I think so.
Oh, yeah, something. But anyway, the Toronto, I don't know if they're at Cleveland Browns level, but in terms of, within the scope of Canadian sports and sports fans, the Toronto Maple Leafs are the hardest of hard luck stories when all these American teams, from sunny United States are down here winning Stanley Cups and they can't get one. And then all of a sudden the Raptors do what they do. And all of that passion, I think, it gets, poured back into that then in the absence of having had hockey to put it into all these years.
One of the pinnacle books I had as a youth was Sports Illustrated's Sports Century, that they produced a series of books at the turn of the century. One of them was called America's Greatest Teams. Or not just America's Greatest Teams, Sports Greatest Teams. And Montreal Canadiens were ranked number 1 all time in sports franchises. And at that moment, they had 24 titles, which was one more than the Yankees. But since then, the Yankees have won 4 more. So the Yankees actually have 27. The Canadiens have 24.
Okay. For the Blues, this is so bizarre. They have been so much better in this entire playoffs on the road than they've been.
I read that. That's crazy. Yeah. They're averaging like a goal and a half more per game on the road, right?
Yeah, that's like 3/4 of a goal, which is still quite a bit. 3.16 goals per game on the road, 2.5 at home. And they are 9-3 on the road in this postseason. I mean, that's unbelievable that they would be 9 out of 12 on the road in a Stanley Cup playoff setting. Tuukka Rask was absolutely locked down in Game 6. And the thing that was disappointing to me, Boston's goalie. The thing that was disappointing, and he's been, with really one exception in this postseason, and it was against St. Louis, has been fantastic. And there's been question marks about Tuukka Rask, particularly in the Stanley Cup final, because he has not necessarily been at his best in that situation, though he's played here in the setting before. What was disappointing about Game 6, which was a 5-1 win by Boston, was that it was a 5-1 win by Boston, not because Boston won it. I'm thrilled that we got a Game 7. I'm loving this. But it wasn't an interesting game as games go. I mean, the Stanley Cup is in the building for St. Louis to potentially win their first ever Stanley Cup, and by the way, wasn't for certainly lack of effort or even lack of opportunity. Tuukka Rask was straight locked down. Totally,
and I thought I did watch Game 6, and I thought that he was so locked down early that I thought the Blues completely shot their wad. I thought they exhausted themselves. They were bringing it in the first period, and then after that, then they just didn't really have any gas left in the tank. And Boston just dominated the entire tempo of the game. I thought the final score was a little bit misleading too, though, because they did heave in a couple empty net goals. But I mean, they were in full control of the game. They played the last 12 minutes of the game with an empty net because it was well in hand. But I agree with you. The Boston goalie, Tuukka Rask, he set the tone early, and I thought that St. Louis really couldn't overcome that.
Tuukka Rask is 5-0 in elimination games in this postseason with a .973 save percentage. So in a game in which Boston could have been knocked out, he has been, in games where they could knock out the other team, he has been outstanding, and they have not yet lost one of those games. .973 save percentage. The other thing is power plays. Boston, there's been so much made of the goalkeeping, the refereeing in this series, and you have obviously the completely blown trip, but there was some things that led to that beforehand that had St. Louis upset, and they were calling out the refs, and then maybe the refs responded, and in terms of being a little more open. St. Louis wants to play a wide open physical style of hockey. Boston wants to play a very skilled style of hockey, and not that they can't play a tough style of hockey as well, but higher numbers of penalties benefit the Bruins for sure. A tighter, a more tightly reffed affair benefits Boston more than it benefits St. Louis, and so it's been a bunch of chirping in the media by both coaches trying to tip the referees in their favor. St. Louis got it in Game 5. It came back in Game 6.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I was just going to ask you before you just described the styles of the teams. I was going to say, to my untrained eye, I thought that it seems as if St. Louis is very wide open and fast, and that Boston is very skilled, veteran, but also it seems like rely a lot more on power and physicality. So I think it's actually ironic that maybe my perception is that they're the more physical team, but that they have been at the advantage in the power plays.
Yeah. Listen, physicality is
who, I mean, the number one guy that makes me think that about Boston, who's their big defenseman? Chara?
Zdeno Chara. Broken jaw, playing ball.
I mean,
yeah.
We glorify these like NFL edge guys. That guy is terrifying.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing about it. I'm sure that there are teams that are quote unquote tougher than other teams. But really it's about what style you need to play. It's not about, okay, well, we just have the biggest, strongest guys per se.
I mean, how big is Chara?
6'9".
He's 6'9".
7 feet on his skates.
I mean, for real though, he looks so crazy out there.
It is. I mean,
because how much does he weigh?
remarkable.
275 pounds?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I mean, he's 6'9", and he is huge.
He's a big, strong guy.
Where's he from?
Eastern Bloc.
Has he ever smiled?
Ukraine? Well, he can't right now.
I don't know.
I
mean, I don't know, man. He's like the number one guy that sticks out, and then you're just looking at him, and you're like, well, that's definitely the guy I would not want to mess with.
Here's the thing. Ryan O'Reilly and Vladimir Tarasenko for St. Louis are two of the most skilled players in hockey. Tarasenko in particular is an absolute delight to watch. He is, I mean, Steph Curry's maybe a little too strong, but in terms of Steph Curry's handle when he's weaving through traffic, Tarasenko has that on the ice in hockey. But Boston's skill guys, there's so many more of them on Boston. I mean, they have a couple of lines deep of absolute puck handling, passing, shooting snipers. And so the Blues, consequently, what they need to do is create the forecheck. What they need to do is create a run at you. What they need to do is create chances from unsettled situations, whereas Boston, if they get a man up, it's dink, 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 goal. I mean, they're 7 in man-up situations in power plays. In this final, Boston's got 7 goals. The Blues got 1. So that's, again, where I'm saying, if the penalties, they just favor Boston in every way when they come, that way, that much. Nonetheless, the atmosphere in Boston, this is the first ever Game 7 in a Stanley Cup final for the Bruins. And as you pointed out, and you'll hear it in the news, the first Game 7 in the city of Boston since 1984 when the Celtics, they beat the Lakers?
They beat the Lakers.
That was the Celtics win. So It's been a long time coming for this. It doesn't happen often anyways, and it's glorious no matter what, and it's going to be, it's going to be an unbelievable atmosphere, and somebody is hoisting the cup tonight or, depending, in the wee hours tomorrow.
Bill Simmons, Ryan Missoula, both from Boston.
Yeah.
They talk about all sorts of things, including pop culture, frequently. One of the movies they always talk about is Gone, Baby, Gone. I watched it last night. It is so Boston. It's fascinating, and it sparked my thought of thinking that this is Game 7 in Boston, which you can't really pick, at least an American city, where it could be any better than that. And I also got to thinking with what happened with David Ortiz in the Dominican Republic, with him getting shot. We were talking about players defining cities defining players, and guys that rise to this hero legend status because of what they mean to a place. And David Ortiz was a legend among legends in Red Sox lore, and then the way he's represented the city since then, and
yes.
His statements with the Boston Marathon and everything like that, with the bombing, and how he has been the face of the city in a lot of ways for a while now. And I just thought, well, if there was ever anything that would send Boston over the edge, it's then having him return to Boston. I just wonder how they're going to use that. You know what I mean? Like, everybody in the stands is going to be thinking about it, and it's obviously going to be something that's motivating to the energy in the arena. But you wonder if David Ortiz gives a salute from his hospital bed. I'm not sure, but if there was ever something that could give an already epic atmosphere more juice, there it is. And so therefore, if you're the St. Louis Blues, you got to be worried coming into this thing. But like you said, they've been so good on the road.
A Game 7, the number one thing that anybody will tell you, and I mean, this applies across the board, NBA Finals games, Super Bowl, whatever. But you got to manage your emotions.
Right.
You got to manage your emotions. And it's interesting in hockey, more than basketball, and I would say even more than in football. What did we see in the first play from scrimmage in the Super Bowl this last year? You see Ndamukong Suh at a 50 out of 10 on the emotional, I'm going to go crush somebody scale. And what do?
Offsides.
Don't block him.
Oh,
No,
right,
they let him.
right,
They're
right.
like, off you go up the field. Now he crushed the fullback, who I still sit here and I go, I don't even know how he ever stood up again. But the point is, it was like, an 8-yard rush on first down up the hole that Ndamukong Suh vacated. The point is, football can be like sumo wrestling in the sense that if you know how amped up a guy is going to be, and even though you want to be energized, you need to be energized to play the sport, you got to keep it within its limits. And you know that. In hockey, you get out there and you skate with your hair on fire for 38 seconds, man. And you go and then you get off of there. And so it is a sport where it lends itself to that. That said, if all you do is skate for 38 seconds and look for somebody to put into the glass and, slap the puck around and don't have your wits about you, a.k.a. can't manage your emotions, it will come back to bite you. And it's very difficult to do in a setting like this. I mean, I can't even imagine, trying to get out there and you probably can't even feel your hands. You know what I mean? You're just out there in a blur. And the first 5-7 minutes of the game tonight is going to be an absolute track meet, and it's a blast to watch. It's a blast to watch. You know what I watched last? No, I'm not going to do this right now. I'll do it.
Save it.
Yeah, I'll save it.
Call us 329-1899. Wing It Wednesday. We got a dozen delicious wings from the Desperado Sports Tavern and Grill.
That's right. Couple questions for you. One on the Stanley Cup, one on the U.S. Women's National Team, who was in the news for the right and wrong reasons this last 24, which we'll talk more about. But 329-1899 wings to the Desperado Sports Tavern. Give us a call right now. We'll do some trivia with you right after this.
Welcome to today's lottery drawing. And today's winning numbers are not yours, not yours, and another number that's not yours. And the final number is not yours.
When it comes to having money, don't rely on luck. Brew your own coffee at home instead of buying that latte. Brown bag it to work instead of ordering in. Go to feedthepig.org for more free ideas on how to save. Feedthepig.org. This message brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Ad Council.
Right now at Carl Tyler Chevrolet, take advantage of employee pricing and up to $7,500 in rebates on all 2018 Silverados. Get the most out of your summer with a reliable truck that'll take you anywhere during Carl Tyler Chevrolet's June Silverado sell down. Save $11,719 on select 2018 Silverado 1500s. View our full inventory at gmofmontana.com or 3663 North Reserve Street. Carl Tyler Chevrolet. Find new roads.
Canyon River Golf Club is a must for any golfer in western Montana. Tucked away in a spectacular setting along the Clark Fork River in East Missoula, Canyon River offers one of Montana's best championship golf experiences. And Canyon River is happy to announce their new fleet of golf carts, which include the Shark Experience, an interactive GPS giving dynamic distances and touchscreen interaction to help you play your best. Plus, with Bluetooth, radio, and surround sound, you can enjoy yourself between holes too. Book online at CanyonRiverGolfClub.com. Missoula's best golf, Canyon River. Hey everybody, Ryan Tootell, and I'm here with Josh of the Advocates Injury Law Firm. Josh, there's a lot of lawyers in this area. What makes you different?
At the Advocates, we primarily focus on injury cases. That gives us the experience and the knowledge to correctly evaluate your case and work with insurance companies and other attorneys so you get exactly what you deserve to make you whole again. We take really good care of our clients, and we're going to fight for every single dollar you deserve.
Call 640-4444 or online at montanaadvocates.com. There are a lot of lawyers. You deserve an advocate.
Alpine Touch makes the perfect gift this summer or any time of year. If you are traveling, bring a gift that is distinctly Montana and give your loved ones some of the best spices anywhere around. From the Alpine Touch Pick 4 Spice Pack to the All-Purpose Twin Pack to the mouth-watering sunflower shoots to Alpine Touch gift cards. Alpine Touch makes the perfect Montana present. Available at retail locations around the state or online for a limited time. Use the code ESPN10 at checkout to get 10% off any online order. Alpine Touch, Montana's special spice.
When you need a bank to help ramp up your savings strategy, look to your local bank, Opportunity Bank of Montana. Build confidence in your financial future when you create a rainy day cushion or take care of the nest egg you already have. Opportunity Bank offers options from basic savings to money market accounts and certificates with competitive rates. There's nothing like the feeling of progress, so let's get started today. Come see us at Opportunity Bank of Montana. OpportunityBank.com. Member FDIC.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon, Ryan Tootell, Colton Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Sports Center. Following a junior season in which he landed on every All-American list in the FCS, Montana's senior linebacker Dante Olson continued piling up preseason accolades Tuesday. He was named the Athlon Sports FCS preseason All-American team, his second preseason nod so far. Olson was one of 8 players from the Big Sky Conference, most in the FCS, to land on the Athlon Sports list, but it was the only defensive player from the league that was on it.
1 week after finishing second at the Unleash the Beast Tour stop in Green Bay, Volberg bull rider Jess Lockwood claimed victory at the Professional Bull Riders Touring Pro Division in Deadwood, South Dakota. What a great place for a rodeo.
Hello.
Competing in the $21,000 purse event, the 2017 PBR World Champion collected $8,125 for the win. Pretty good for 8 seconds. In the championship round, the 21-year-old Lockwood scored 91 points. He was the only rider to post a score in that championship round.
A deciding Game 7 descends upon Boston for the first time since 1984 tonight as the Bruins host the St. Louis Blues in the last game of the 2019 Stanley Cup Final. The Bruins, one of the NHL's original 6 teams, are trying to win the Stanley Cup for the 7th time, while the Blues are in the finals for the first time since 1970 and are looking for their first ever Stanley Cup. The last time Boston hosted a Finals Game 7, the Celtics defeated the Los Angeles Lakers in 1984 for the NBA title. Puck drops at 6. You know, sometimes it's just a good day to be in the world. I mean, every day is a good day to be in the world. It's a good day to be in the radio in the world, and the TV in the world, and on the YouTube in the world with all of you. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Thanks for spending some time with us. We appreciate it. It is Tootell and Nuanez. We are broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy. Online at kurtzpolaris.com. You can find us on Twitter. How about that? The Twitter machine, at Gus Tootell. That's me at 1029 ESPN. And at Skyline Sports MT, your relevant Twitter handles. Let's go to the phones. We welcome in Jesse for a Wing It Wednesday today. Jesse, how are you?
Hey, doing good. How are you guys doing?
Doing excellent, Jesse. Are you in western Montana right now? You out and about? What are you up to?
Yeah, yes, sir. I'm here in beautiful Missoula, Montana.
Okay.
Getting ready to watch the Stanley Cup final tonight. Pretty excited about it.
Excellent. Good choice by you there. Did you listen to any of the Trail 103.3 this morning? Are you familiar with Craig and his work?
No, I'm not.
It's okay. That's not your first trivia question. It was simply
okay.
a question.
So
it's good of you to answer in the affirmative. Do you have a rooting interest in the game tonight?
Oh, I do. I'm a huge hockey fan. I love hearing you guys talk hockey on the radio.
Good,
so
because we're actually terrified
because
we get on here and we go, nobody wants to hear us talk hockey on the radio. Not because people don't like hockey, but because who are we to talk about hockey? Huh, Coulter? But, we got
It's actually interesting, though, because I would say the most consistent feedback that we've gotten is we want more hockey. I think there's a lot of hockey fans around here, man.
Oh, I love it. Me and some of my beer league teammates are gonna play a little scrimmage game at the rink tonight. Get the game going on the tailgate out in the parking lot.
Oh,
so it's gonna be a party.
Outstanding.
So.
Okay, so who are you rooting for?
Well, yeah, I didn't answer that. The hardest part.
Because we know what the answer is.
Well, I'm a diehard Sharks fan, right? So hear me out.
Oh boy,
the Sharks got eliminated by the Blues.
Yes, they did.
But everybody hates Boston. No one wants to see Boston win it.
That is true.
I'd rather nobody win it, but if somebody has to, I guess it's got to be the Blues.
Wow. Okay. Look at you swallowing that bitter pill. I was actually rooting for the Sharks as well, and at least in the Final Four, because Joe Thornton and the whole thing. I love Erik Karlsson; he's my guy, and so when he comes down from Ottawa, I was like, yeah, well, give me the Sharks. Even though San Jose, I don't know.
They've had such a tough go these last 20 years or so too, but that's all right. There's always next year.
I mean, spring. What is it? Spring springs eternal. Hope springs eternal. Okay, whatever it is. All right, Jesse. Here's the deal. We got 3 questions for you. If you get 2 of them right, you got yourself a basket of wings to the Desperado Sports Tavern. If you get all 3, you're going to get yourself a shirt as well. If you need any help on these, Coulter is your lifeline. All right.
All right, let's do it.
Boy, some chicken wings would really hit the spot. Tummy likey. Tummy want wingy.
Okay, Jesse, here we go. First question. We're going soccer on this, okay? Hard left from hockey into soccer.
Ooh,
the United States women's national team played in their first World Cup game of this World Cup yesterday, a game in which they won, defeating Thailand. What controversy did they stir up in that win that has bled over into today? Why are people talking about this game and having a little bit of controversy about it?
Oh, man, I'm so glad this is the question because I would know nothing about soccer. But the controversy was the women scored 13-0, and they celebrated every single goal like that was their first goal ever. And so the controversy is stop celebrating, right?
You've nailed it. You've nailed it. And I'll bet there's other soccer questions you would know the answer to. I could ask you if you could use your hands in soccer if you're not a goalie. I bet you know the answer to that. But you have gotten this one correct. Very well done. Easy enough.
All right.
Now, I mean, I don't know if this is really pressure, but I expect you to get this one now with your hockey fandom here. I mean, this was a little bit of a layup. I don't know, but if the Blues, the St. Louis Blues, who you are tepidly rooting for, win the Stanley Cup final tonight against Boston, how many Stanley Cups will the St. Louis Blues as a franchise have in their history?
Oh, man, they'll be their one and only Stanley Cup.
My friend, you've got yourself wings to the Desperado. Excellently done by you. Very, very well done. Love it very much. Okay, here we go. Third and final question. Who was the first head football coach in the history of Montana State University after it became Montana State University?
Ooh.
Say it again.
Who was the first head coach in the history of Montana State? Not when they were like Montana College or whatever, but when it became a university, first ever head football coach for the Montana State Bobcats.
Good question, guys.
Oh, you said for Montana State Bobcats?
Yeah.
Ooh.
So Montana State was at Montana State College for years and years, and University of Montana was actually Montana State University, and then it was rebranded University of Montana, Montana State University, which was Montana College.
I don't know. I'm going to have to use a lifeline. You got me there.
Good choice.
I don't know if I actually do know the answer to this. I'm trying to think of when they were officially transitioned to Montana State University. I believe they were Montana State College when they won the 1956 NAIA National Championship. Am I correct in that assumption?
I believe that's true.
Okay, so that means it's a post-Tony Storty. Tony Storty was the head coach in the late 50s before giving way to Jim Sweeney, who was the head coach of Montana State in the 60s. I think Jim Sweeney is probably your answer. Montana State was definitely Montana State University by the time the Big Sky Conference was founded in 1963, and Jim Sweeney was the first coach that led the Bobcats into the Big Sky Conference. So I'm not 100% sure, but I would say Jim Sweeney is the answer.
Jesse, would you like to reject that and go out on your own, or would you like to accept that answer?
I don't think I can go against my man there. We got to go with Sweeney.
Give this man a shirt.
Hey, all right.
Jim Sweeney, very well done, Jesse. Great work by you. Thanks for calling in. That's how you do it, boys and girls. It's just that simple. Give your information there in the back. Make sure we can get a hold of you. We'll get you all the goodies on a Wing It Wednesday. All right, Jesse?
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Very well done. Nice work, Coulter.
Yep.
I took a hard left off the question that I had because I was like, well, he needs to use a lifeline. I wanted to ensure that he would use you because sometimes you sit there and you look so lonely, and I'm like, well, hey, let's have this guy actually talk to Colter.
So let's talk about, just quickly, because I do want to get in this U.S. women's national team briefly as well, but this is crazy to really think about this. We talked about Jean Bourdette on the show the other week.
Yes.
And Jean Bourdette was a guy that
passed World War II vet.
Yep, and he was the athletic director at Montana State. A lot of people think that. Most people give Jean Bourdette credit for bringing Montana State into becoming a quote unquote modern day athletic department for becoming a Division I program and all these sorts of things. But we mentioned sort of his exit from coaching into administration when Tony Storty stepped away. But when you look at Montana State's call it modern history, just from the 50s when they won that 1956 national championship on through, and then the origination of the Big Sky Conference in 1963. Yeah, Tony Storty, who stepped down, resigned. Jim Sweeney is the only Bobcat coach of even our parents' lifetimes that has gone on to get a different and quote-unquote better job. Jim Sweeney went on to coach at Washington State and Fresno State. Sonny Holland, widely considered one of the greatest, probably the greatest coach in the history of the program. He stepped away at the age of 38, became the athletic director. Tom Perrick took over, but was only there for a minute. Sonny Lubick, who went on to become an absolute legend at Miami as well as Colorado State, abruptly fired in 1981. The 1981 recruiting class, which many consider to be one of the greatest in the history of the state of Montana, then helped lead the Bobcats to the 1984 national championship under Dave Arnold. But people forget that the 1984 national championship was sandwiched by a 1-10 and 2-9 season. How crazy is that? They went 1-10 national championship, 2-9. How?
Pretty big spike.
Unbelievable. So then Dave Arnold gets fired. So then they hire Earl Solenson, fired. Cliff Heisel, gray area, but forced out. Mike Kramer, multiple Big Sky Conference championships, controversy, fired. Rob Ash, winningest coach in school history, fired. It's just insane to me that in the modern history of Bobcat football, that they've only had one coach that actually that left the school to take a different and better job.
Let me say this. At the FCS level, you would think that there would be more, that it would be more balanced than that.
Mm-hmm.
But again, shout out tomorrow, 5:00 right here, the ESPN roundtable with Montana State current head football coach Jeff Choate.
Mm-hmm.
What did he say to us? When you take this job, everybody's got a shelf life.
But I also think it's just fascinating because during that time, during that era we just spoke of, Montana State won 1956, 1976, and 1984 national championships. Granted, only the 84 was as a Division I AA member.
Right.
But still, you're winning the national championship at the level you're playing at. It's impressive. They've won 15 some odd Big Sky Conference championships in that time. Just this century, they've won or shared 8. And the last 2 coaches have gotten fired.
Yeah.
It just shows you, first of all, what controversy can do. Also displays what Jeff Choate said, the shelf life. But it also shows you just how fierce the rivalry with Montana is and just how much that matters, especially on that side of the mountain.
You know what else I think it shows, though, if I can? The light speed evolution of the sport of college football. Notably, going back to Cliff Heisel.
Sure.
Between Cliff Heisel, Mike Kramer, and Rob Ash, that's 24 seasons of coaching.
Definitely.
So you're going back now.
It's not as right. It's not as if these guys had short stints.
Right. So
Heisel was there for the whole 90s, and Kramer was there for 7 years, and Ash was there for 9.
And what it takes to get fired in, say, 1990 and before, in the 80s and the 70s, and
Good
what
point.
It takes to get fired in 2010,
right?
Hugely different.
Totally.
Hugely different.
But it also can show you just how much rash decisions can have ramifications on your program, too. There's a lot of controversy behind when Sonny Lubick was fired. And that had such crazy ramifications because the Bobcats hit this weird peak with the 84 championship, but then that set an even different, weirder standard. So you fire a guy who probably didn't deserve to get fired, and you only bottom out for a minute and then win a national championship with a bunch of the players that he recruited, but then you can't live up to those expectations. So then the guy who won the national championship, Dave Arnold, is fired. And then you try to go recruit the North Dakota State hero and Earl Solomson. And it's crazy how that seriously matriculated all the way down to then losing to the Grizzlies 16 times in a row, to then basically having a coup to steal Mike Kramer from Eastern Washington to bring him back to save your program and end the streak. And then all the controversy that ensued after that. It's wild. I mean, it's that's why this rivalry is so fascinating to cover, because you talk about the parallels between these two programs and what has happened in the modern era and how that's influenced what the rivalry is today. It's enthralling.
Would you say that firing Rob Ash was rash? Dad jokes!
Canyon River Golf Club is a must for any golfer in western Montana. Tucked away in a spectacular setting along the Clark Fork River in East Missoula, Canyon River offers one of Montana's best championship golf experiences. And Canyon River is happy to announce their new fleet of golf carts, which include the Shark Experience, an interactive GPS giving dynamic distances and touchscreen interaction to help you play your best. Plus, with Bluetooth, radio, and surround sound, you can enjoy yourself between holes too. Book online at CanyonRiverGolfClub.com. Missoula's best golf, Canyon River.
Treat Dad right Father's Day with the Montana Club's awesome all-you-can-eat buffet, featuring all of the slow-roasted prime rib and glazed ham Dad can put away, plus bacon, sausage, eggs, sweet treats, fresh fruit, and more. Or bring them in for dear old Dad dinner specials like osso buco and steak Sinatra. We'll even treat Dad to a free brewski on Father's Day. Father's Day all-you-can-eat buffet from 8 to 2, or palate-pleasing Papa dinner specials 3 to close. The Montana Club on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Town Pump, who pump it up, pump it up.
You know you need a pick-me-up, and Town Pump has just the thing. Make a quick stop at Town Pump today and grab 3 12-ounce Red Bulls for only $7. Or get any size fountain drink for only $1. Town Pump Food Stores, proud to be part of our community.
Town Pump, right down the road, pump it up, oh yeah.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable with. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
Hey folks, Ryan Tootell, and I'm here with Josh of the Advocates. Josh, do most injury accidents end up in court?
Luckily, most personal injury cases can be settled out of court through a fair negotiation with an insurance company. However, sometimes it is necessary. I'm prepared to do whatever it takes to get a fair settlement. Luckily, most personal injury cases can be settled out of court with a fair negotiation with the insurance company. However, I'm prepared to do whatever it takes to get the right settlement for you.
It's Josh at the Advocates, 640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com.
On September 14th, Montana plays at one of the hallowed venues in college football when the Grizz head to Autzen Stadium to take on the Oregon Ducks. All summer long, Whitmer Brothers Brewing will be providing you with the opportunity to win a pair of tickets to the Grizz Ducks Showdown in September. All you need to do is register at designated locations around Missoula, then attend a live broadcast of Tootell and Nuanez to win tickets. Stay tuned to ESPN Missoula for participating locations, and keep an eye out for Whitmer Brothers Hefeweizen on tap in the Garden City. Whitmer Brothers Hefe, the original American-style Hefeweizen.
Tootell and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula.
United States women's national team in the news. Coulter hates this so much. And this is going to be a great segment. It's Tootell and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio.
I can't wait to hear your stance on this. If you are implying that our stances are opposite, then I can't wait. Let's go.
We are broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy, online at kurtzpolaris.com. I don't know that they're going to be different. They're good. I know that we're going to be in agreement on some of this.
Okay.
United States women's national team, look, you probably know by now, right? Win game 1 of their World Cup group stage match, 13-0 over Thailand. And in soccer terms, that's like 1,000,000-0. That is an embarrassing defeat. It is sort of an embarrassing win at a level, but a huge win. Alex Morgan, 5 goals in the game, among others, and so controversy, sort of a twofold controversy. Whatever, sure, call it controversy today. One is the win and the continuing to play starters and the perceived running up of the score in that game. And then the second part of this is the continued celebration after each goal, which were in certain instances happening minutes, if not even seconds apart from one another, as the United States went on to just thump Thailand in this game. So there you go. There's the sort of short story of this. I did not watch the game. I did go back. There is a montage of every goal that has been scored. I did watch that, and so I've seen the visual that accompanies the scoring onslaught that happened. This was interesting. This game was like, I think 3-0 at halftime, something like that. So it wasn't, the scoring happened very late in this game. But anyway, Coulter, go ahead. Let's.
Well, first of all, what do you think?
Sure.
What do you think of them running it up?
When it comes to, quote, running up the score, I almost unequivocally hold this stance. I will make one small caveat. It's the World Cup.
Exactly.
The biggest stage that you can be in. You are they professional? They're professional. This is not amateur anyway. I mean, not that it would matter even if it was the Olympics, right?
Yes, the top women's players are.
Okay.
I mean, Alex Morgan is one of the biggest soccer stars in the world, period,
if you can
man or
win
woman.
100-0 in a setting like that, it does not matter. You don't want us to run up the score, make a save, make a stop. Don't let us do what we do. So I got no problem with 13-0. I will make this one caveat, and by the way, my stance holds. I still have no problem with it. There is obviously a great disparity.
I think this is the first time that Thailand's ever played in the World Cup.
Between the best, and the United States is one of the handful of best women's soccer teams on earth, and the have-nots and the up-and-comers, and especially in places, and I don't know the history of women's sports in Thailand. I do know that the history of women's sports globally has been non-existent in a lot of places, and in some places to this very day, where women are not allowed to play sports, and in places where finally they are, obviously to try and get the thing off the ground is just a tremendous uphill battle to catch up with, teams and countries in countries that have had women's sports for such a long time. So even though it is a professional and national and World Cup stage, if you're playing a team that doesn't have that, and again, I don't know what Thailand's history is, but maybe their first ever World Cup, like you say, there is, I think that is a consideration that is worth noting. But that said, you know what? That's what the World Cup is. You came here, you showed up, and you got blown out. Sorry. That's the way the thing goes, and I can't do it. I have no idea what the substitution deal was. Should Alex Morgan be the one that's out there scoring goals in the 93rd minute of the thing? I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and evaluate that stuff. But, I mean, you only have 3 substitutions anyway.
Right.
And so it's not
and she tied a 28-year-old record for the national team record for goals in a game.
So,
I get that it's against an overmatched opponent, but in soccer, those sorts of records, you don't even get the chance to challenge them. Right. So you leave her in and let her score because she is one of the great women's soccer players in the history of the United States. So she deserves to be remembered as such in the record books.
So at that level, I got no problem. Okay? The celebration side of it, I got a problem. I had a problem with this from the women's team. I mean, enough already. Yeah,
but if you cover enough women's sports, that it's become a very distinct and emphasized part of women's athletics is the exuberance, the constant energy, the constant celebration. It's one of the things that has helped so many different women's sports gain traction. And if you're going to instill that culture and you want all your teammates to cheer each other on at all times and be happy, happy, happy when everybody accomplishes something, then you can't just pull it off. You just have to live with it. And every once in a while, you might beat a team 13-0 and you're jumping into each other's arms. But that's just the way that it has to be if you want that to be part of your culture.
Utterly and completely disagree.
Also, when it comes to international competition, let's go, America. I want you to win 100-0 every single time, and I want you to celebrate like it.
No, that's insane. That's such a bad look, okay? If an NFL team, what do we always crush guys in the NFL for? Either celebrating when you're losing 30
I don't crush anybody for anything. Flip your bat. Celebrate your touchdown. Stand over the guy when you hit him super hard in football. I love all of it. Growl at somebody when you dunk on him. Give me every single second of it in every single sport.
So it's, I don't know, 115 to 72 with 30 seconds to go, and you go up and throw down an uncontested duck because everybody's quit, and then you flex it out back up the floor. And you're like, yeah, give me all that you got. That's a great look for you as you win by 50.
The only time I was ever turned off by anything like this is when Ricky Pierce was closing in on a triple-double, and he missed 2 layups on purpose to give himself 2 extra rebounds. Yes. That's the only time I've ever been turned off by any of this stuff.
Here's my issue with this. It's twofold.
I mean, I guess it's all situational because there is other times when I've been like, okay, that's enough. Yesterday, I didn't think that.
It's 8 or 9-0, and on that 8th or 9th goal, the gal who scored it, whose name I don't know, runs over to the sideline, is riding one foot, kicking the other leg out, slides like she's sliding into first base, and continues to kick the leg that isn't on the ground up in the air in some sort of weird one-footed kick dance like that I would be capable of because I only got the one functioning foot. That was a joke. And the whole thing, here's my thing. The surface level of this bothers me. But it's not what gives me the biggest consternation. The surface level is don't rub it into the face of Thailand. Okay? Have some respect for your opponent and the way that you approach it.
I don't think it had anything to do with Thailand, though.
No. It has something to do with Thailand.
I mean,
They're out there playing. You are going to win. You're going to win going away. You're already up double digits in a soccer match. Let it go for their sake.
I don't think you can, though.
Yes, of course
I don't think it's even tactical. First of all, three of those women scored their first World Cup goals in their lives yesterday. I don't care if it's 7-0, 1-0, you broke a 0-0 tie, you're gonna celebrate that. And that's what I'm saying. I don't think it's tactical. I don't even think they can help it. I think that's the culture they've created on their team. I don't think they were jumping in each other's arms to rub it in anybody's face. I just think that's how they operate. I think they will celebrate every single goal they score for the end of time as long as they're on the same team together.
The idea that you would be unable to restrain yourself from celebrating after scoring a goal because you've been, like, quote, trained to do it is an ice-cold take by you.
No way.
That is insane.
No way.
Yes, it is. But you know what the other part of this that really bothers me? Have some respect for yourself. Act like you are what you are, which is a professional who's up 10, not like you just scored the game winner in the semifinal.
How often does the World Cup come around?
Every 4 years.
How often does the luckiest of lucky players get to play in the World Cup? Twice?
3?
3 times, maybe?
Well, 4 for the best.
And then you're playing in one of the iconic but also first world countries where there's massive amounts of fans in France. You're playing, how many people were at that game yesterday? Tens of thousands, 80,000 people?
Great.
I'm just saying, man, if you want to have that level of exuberance in every match you play, then it has to start at the first match, regardless of who you're playing.
Coulter, we have seen games where the first 2, 3, 4 touchdowns scored were full team celebrations.
Do you get what I'm talking about? Do you get what I'm talking about with women's sports, though? I mean, this has been something that's turned the corner so much, and it's one of the best parts about the evolution of women's sports is the emotion that's expressed and how cool it is now. I mean, there's no crazier benches than the benches during the Final Four of women's college basketball.
Right, and the softball teams,
chanting the whole time.
Volleyball, you have a full-on
it's exactly softball's a great example.
Point.
Oklahoma could be up 8-0, and their pitcher be throwing a no-hitter, and they're gonna chant every single pitch from start to finish. Period, because that's what the culture is. That's what your coach requires you to do. That's what the U.S. team's coach said yesterday. She said, this is what I want from my players. I'm not going to say anything to any of them.
Yeah, that's protecting your players. That's fine. Doing something that is that every team does within the context of a sport that is a part of the culture of the whole sport is fine. Saying that celebrating is a culture of soccer no matter how many goals you've scored is just false. It's got nothing to do with being women or men's soccer. It has everything to do with how much are you ahead and how much respect do you have for yourself and your opponent. And the answer was not that much.
Do you think in any situation, in any sport, that if you scored in any form or fashion in the world championships, that you would be able to restrain your celebration?
Yes.
No, you wouldn't. I don't think anybody would.
Yes, of course you would. We see this all the time. If you're up 45-3 in an NFL playoff football game and you score a touchdown, I mean, yeah, you might. I'm not saying you can't do anything. I'm not saying you can't pump your fist, but the spinoramas out there on the field, it's insane.
Yeah, but it's so much different because those guys have such a brighter spotlight and so much more exposure. Like some of these gals are never going to be. I mean, they're going to be on TV the next 3 weeks and then never again. They'll never play in the World Championships. What if that's the only international goal that they ever score? You'd feel pretty dumb if you didn't celebrate it.
If it's your first ever goal, I will grant you. If it is your first ever goal.
Well, the one you were talking about with the girl who scored to make it 9-0, that was her first World Cup goal. Let her be happy. Go America.
It's got nothing to do with America or not or anything else. It's nothing to do with the United States national team. It's about sport across the board. Hour 1 in the books. Another victory for me in a debate forum with Coulter. Feels so good. Brooks Koepka, he's on fire. Next.
Hey, Tootell, Nuanez here. Can't tell you how many times we've heard the face for radio joke since we came on SWX television, but it's been a fun endeavor so far.
And now our esteemed producer Tommy is pushing the envelope even further. We got our own YouTube channel.
That's right. If you want to watch us every day from your computer, your tablet, your cell phone, you can check out Tootell and Nuanez on YouTube.
Tootell and Nuanez, live every weekday from 4 to 6 in the afternoons on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula, SWX Montana statewide, and now around the planet Earth on YouTube.
Good news. Missoulians can finally move into what we love best, being outside. Garden City Paint and Glass can help you get a head start on all those outside home improvement projects. Now is also a great time to start getting a jump on cracked windows and broken screens. Enjoy up to 25% off select products. And be sure to watch for PPG rebates to help the job along. Look good, stay comfortable, and keep energy costs down at Garden City Paint and Glass. 3217 Brooks or 549-0608.
Les Schwab is proud to introduce two of our best tires ever just in time for summer. There's our exclusive Reputation, a high-mileage premium passenger tire we believe has the quietest, most comfortable ride ever. Or our exceptionally quiet and smooth all-season traction tire, the Open Range AT. Get $50 off alignment when you purchase a set of 4 Open Range AT or Reputation tires. Book an appointment today at leschwab.com. Les Schwab Tires. Doing the right thing matters. Cannot be combined with other offers. Limited time only. See details at leschwab.com.
On Russell, across from the fairgrounds.
In Western Montana, we know shopping local matters, but we also know that you're going to pay more for the quality and customer service that comes with it. Well, not at Selway Armory. Selway Armory is locally owned with a staff of specialists that can answer any question. In addition to the expertise, though, Selway Armory also has a bigger selection and, are you ready, lower prices than the box stores. When you're in the market for firearms and accessories, save money with the experts at Selway Armory. Selway Armory, 2825 Stockyard Road, Unit E6, and online at selwayarmory.com.
The splash of launching a new boat, the quiet of a favorite campsite, the noisy fun of a family barbecue on your new deck. Whatever summer sounds like to you, make it happen with a personal loan from Farmers State Bank. 9 locations to serve you, or start the loan application process online at farmersebank.com. Farmers State Bank, your Montana bank since 1907, an equal housing lender and member FDIC.
Still emerging from your winter hibernation and need to get your bearings straight? Cruise on down to Port of Missoula for all your spring and summer needs. Come check out their men's and women's streetwear, sunglasses, and shoes from brands like Vans, Adidas, Thrasher, Volcom, and the original Port of Missoula brand. They also have all your skating needs covered, from tune-ups to fresh-made custom boards. Port of Missoula, Missoula's original board shop since 1989, on the Hip Strip, 618 South Higgins.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana, KKVU HD3 Stevensville, and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula. ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
It was Megan Rapinoe, for crying out loud. It wasn't some first goal scorer. She's like the biggest veteran in the history of soccer. Get her out of here with that. Following a junior season in which he landed on every All-American list in the FCS, Montana senior linebacker Dante Olson continued piling up preseason accolades on Tuesday. He was named to the Athlon Sports FCS preseason All-American team, his second preseason nod so far. Olson was one of 8 players from the Big Sky Conference, most in the FCS to land on the Athlon Sports list. He was also, though, the only defensive player from the Big Sky.
1 week after finishing second at the Unleash the Beast Tour stop in Green Bay, Volberg native and champion bull rider Jess Lockwood claimed the victory at the PBR Tour Pro Division in Deadwood, South Dakota on Saturday night, competing for a $21,000 purse. The 2017 PBR World Champion collected $8,125 for the win. In the championship round, the 21-year-old Lockwood scored 91 points. He's the only rider to score in that championship round.
It's a good payday. If you're riding a bull, the purse just has to be more than $21,000. I mean, you just got to be. We got to get more for the bull riders. A deciding Game 7 tonight in Boston for the first time since 1984. The Bruins hosting the Blues. It'll be the first Stanley Cup final Game 7 ever in Boston. The last one was in 1984. In the NBA Finals, in which the Celtics defeated the Lakers. 6 o'clock, Buck Drop, NBC TV.
Now they always say congratulations. Work so hard, forgot how to vacation. They ain't never had the dedication. People hating, say we changing, look, we made it. Yeah, we made it. They was never friendly, yeah. Now I'm jumping out of Bentley, yeah. And I know I sound dramatic, yeah. But I know I had to have it, yeah. For the money,
Brooks Koepka.
Yeah. I be itching like I had it, yeah. I'm
starting to bring me around a little bit. Still don't like him, but I'm not a hater. Not like I was. Tootell, Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy, online at kurtzpolaris.com. If you missed anything in the first hour, check out the podcast. Podcast available on the TuneIn Radio app, iTunes, Spotify, station website. Listen to it, rate it, review it, subscribe to it. We appreciate all that. It is brought to us by the Wyndham by Wingate Hotel.
Wingate by Wyndham. You're going to get it one of these days.
Never going to get it. I'm sorry. What is it?
The Wingate by Wyndham.
By Wyndham.
Wyndham's a umbrella company that also owns La Quinta and the Wingate. By Wyndham.
By Wyndham. There's others by Wyndham. The Wingate is the one that's doing this one, and we appreciate them for it.
Yep, north of Missoula, great place.
329-1899, the phone number. All guests join us via the Ranks Brothers RV phone line, and you will need that number here in about 20 minutes or so. We will do another Wing It Wednesday with you for some wings to the Desperado Sports Tavern. Colt just got his trivia questions ready to go, so you hold on to that number, and you be ready to go.
Mallory Pugh scored her first goal, which was not, in fact, the girl who celebrated. That girl had scored previous World Cup goals.
That girl is Megan Rapinoe, perhaps behind Alex Morgan, the most famous face of women's soccer in America, who has scored many World Cup and international goals in her career.
Yep.
Terrible. Brutal. Nah. That actually makes me even more upset. I mean, it's just insane.
Why don't you like domination?
I told you this is not about the domination.
How do you want them to act?
Like they expect it.
But how can you expect it? You're in the World Cup.
Bro, if you go out against your nephew Ellis, God bless him, he's the greatest athlete that's 3 years old that I have ever met. and you go one-on-one, and you throw that thing down, and you start leg kicking around the gym, you know what you are? A moron.
How many of those women on the U.S. national team had any idea about the history of Thailand or the quality of the team that they were playing?
All of them.
I don't know, man.
Are you out of your mind?
You can't scale back when you're a top-level athlete. Is Tiger Woods supposed to not win the U.S. Open at Pebble Beach by 20 strokes like he did 20 years ago?
What did we already talk about? Yes, win it by 20. Don't snap your club over your knee and throw it in the air and start shooting off fireworks on the green. Right? I mean, that's...
I don't know, man. It's just emotion. I don't think anybody did it to insult anybody or have any bad sportsmanship. They're just celebrating on the world stage.
Bad sportsmanship. It's a bad look. It's bad all the way around. Win by 13. I'm all for it. I'm all for winning by 13. Let's do it the right way.
It seems like we're just talking about this just to talk about it.
Isn't that the job
proud
that we have?
No. Just be proud of the American women. Go America. They're going to bring home the World Cup. It's going to be glorious.
Brooks Koepka is a fine golfer. He's won 5 tournaments in his life. 4 of them are majors. And he holds the last 2 U.S. Opens in his pocket right now. Actually, it's a big trophy you get for the U.S. Open. So he does not have it in his pocket as such. But he has won the last 2. He is the betting favorite to win this one again now at Pebble Beach, which begins tomorrow. And the U.S. Open is unique in a couple of ways. First of all, it's the one major that is administrated and put on by the USGA. A lot of people don't necessarily recognize the difference between the PGA and the USGA. There is a difference. This is a USGA event. This is the USGA major. And a lot of players have a lot of negative things to say about the USGA for reasons ranging from very reasonable to crazy. And I think that at times the USGA has made a mess of it. They are also the governing body. Like when rules changes happen, like you can leave the pin in now while you putt. That's a USGA determination that they make. A lot of players take issue with course setup. Now, we've said this before, Colter, but the U.S. Open has historically been and wanted to be by the USGA the toughest round, the toughest course, and therefore the toughest place to score of any place you play all year, certainly in any of the majors. They want the winners to be hovering around even.
Yep.
And you definitely don't want to embarrass professional golfers. And really, it's not even embarrass them. It is, if a guy hits a great shot, he can't be penalized for it. If he hits a great shot and it turns out bad because the course is in such extreme shape, that's unacceptable. It's not golf at that point. You're not rewarding the skill of what the players are doing. But it is a fine line to get up to that edge if you can get there and not go over it. At times, the USGA has gone over it. The afternoon of the third round at Chambers Bay.
I was just going to say
would be one of those
when they domed all the greens out and made some of the holes like literal up hills. I mean, you got guys sticking it 12 feet from the pin and the thing rolls 60 yards down the fairway.
Yep.
I mean, it was almost like a cartoon.
Well, it was a situation which the green had to have a line drawn around it so you knew when you were on it, as opposed to being on the fringe and or fairway, which were effectively the same thing. So yes, that got away from them, and I get that. And there are reasons and times to be critical of the USGA. Brooks Koepka, having none of it, Colter. He says on complaining about the USGA course setups, quote, "Yeah, I mean, I guess the only reason they're complaining, everybody has got to play the same golf course, so it really doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make a difference. If you put it in the fairway and you hit every green, there's really no problem, is there?"
That was your Burn Street Bistro Burn of the Week.
Brooks Koepka. Give me a second to find it. Sorry. Getting us the Burn Street Bistro Burn of the Week. I don't know if we've ever contributed a Burn of the Week to an entity other than you and I. Thank you to Brooks Koepka for that. First of all, how confident do you have to be in what you got going on to go, well, all you got to do is hit every fairway and every green, and then you don't have an issue, a.k.a. quit being terrible at golf. And by the way, not even terrible. Stop being not the greatest at golf. You got to hit every fairway, hit every green, and then you don't have an issue. He went on to say, quote, so obviously they're not doing what they're supposed to do, so they're not playing good enough. If you put it in the fairway, you shouldn't have to complain about the rough. You hit the greens and you hit it close, you shouldn't have to complain about the greens. I've just never been one to complain, make excuses. It doesn't matter. True? Not true.
Before the PGA Championship, somebody asked him what he thought of just the challenges of majors. And he said, I think the majors are the easiest to win. There's 156 players in the field, so you figure at least 80 of them, I'm just going to beat them. You figure about the other half aren't going to play well, so now you're down to all the way down to 35, and then you have, of those 35, some of them, the pressure's just going to get to them, and it only leaves a few more, and I have full confidence I can beat those guys.
It's pretty good.
I mean, there's a great quote floating around Twitter from Brooks Koepka to his coach at Florida State.
Right.
And he
This
said,
is a great one.
He said, well, I hit it as far and straighter than Tiger Woods off the tee. My irons are better, and I'm a better putter. So why can't I be better than Tiger Woods? And that's a almost blasphemous statement to make until you go and win 4 majors in 9 starts, and you're knocking on the door of being as good as Tiger Woods was at once upon a time. If he's the three,
now.
I mean, okay,
He's 29.
Okay, but here's the thing, though. What you just said about the U.S. Open and just how hard it's been throughout the years, there has never been a 3 straight U.S. Open winner. Never, ever, ever. If he wins this tournament, I do not care what happens the rest of his career. This run is one of the all-time great, if not arguably maybe the greatest run. The fact that it lacks the tournament that has the prestige of the Masters leaves a giant hole in it. But to be completely honest, Augusta is not as hard as any of the courses that he's won these U.S. Opens on. If he wins 3 straight U.S. Opens, that is a moment in golf that will stand alone as one of the great accomplishments in the history of the sport.
Well, and he's already, currently right now, done something that no one's ever done, and that's have back-to-back PGAs and back-to-back.
Only 2-time reigning champion in 2 different majors at the same time.
Correct. Not even those specifically 2, but in any of the 4 to have 2 of the same one at the same time. It's never happened before until Brooks won this last major, excuse me. It's on one hand impossible to deny how great Brooks Koepka has been, and frankly at a level how he's clearly built for majors. On the other hand, I'm sort of struck by the lack of non-major success. Now, in a sport that hinges on the majors, in which your name in the history books is nobody knows about Tiger's 82 wins. They know about his 15 major victories.
Totally.
Same with Jack Nicklaus and the 18 and all that. So this is where you carve it out. So on the one hand, you go, that's even more impressive. But who has ever in the history of golf won 4 times as many majors as they have just tournaments?
It's true.
And that's what – and it doesn't – it just makes me wonder why he's able to do what he's done. Clearly he has. But also, is there something that I'm missing about the – I mean, he is 29. He's not old by any stretch. But, I mean, Jordan Spieth – Rory McIlroy, they're 20, 21, 22 years old doing it. Brooks Koepka was in his mid to late mid-20s before it was like, okay, well, who's this guy?
Well, right, but majors are so much about mentality and not falling apart. And how many of the guys that are on par with Brooks Koepka talent-wise have just completely and utterly blown their chance to have multiple majors straight up by melting down. I mean, Jordan Spieth has won multiple majors. He's won multiple majors.
Yep.
He has also completely and utterly blown a chance to win at least 3 more.
Yeah.
And Rory McIlroy, same thing. Rory McIlroy has been in the mix to win both the Masters and the U.S. Open and faded.
Yes.
We were talking about this on the golf course the other day. I can't remember if it was with you or with somebody else, but we were talking about the interesting dynamic of both Dustin Johnson and Ricky Fowler. Dustin Johnson can let it rip, like no one we've seen on tour since Phil Mickelson, and like almost no one we've ever seen on tour. I mean, Dustin Johnson, when he lets it rip, can let it rip. But he has basically ever since he won that U.S. Open, which is his lone major, he has adjusted his style in majors to be the guy that's in contention on Sunday, and he plays a lot more safe than what his actual personality and his game has as a possibility. Mm-hmm. And Ricky Fowler is the same way. I mean, Ricky Fowler has never won a major. Ricky Fowler's finished in more top 10s in the last 5 years than anybody in golf. And it's almost like Ricky just wants to be in the mix rather than chasing it. Because when you chase the top, there's such a higher chance. I mean, it's risk-reward probability, right? When you're shooting a 67, a 66, especially when you're talking about the U.S. Open and the British Open, then there's a real chance you're shooting 76 or 80. And I think that both Ricky Fowler and Dustin Johnson have said, okay, we're just going to shoot 70. We're going to shoot 70, 70, 70, 70, see where we're at. But I think it's interesting because as far as, we always talk about Sunday at a major. And Brooks Koepka looked vulnerable for the first time ever at the PGA Championship.
And this is what I want to ask you.
So we'll get into that first for a minute. But one of the reasons that Tiger Woods was so transcendent and so unbelievably popular and magnetic and compelling and just legendary was the intimidation that Tiger brought on a Sunday. There was no doubt, not only was he not going to melt down when he had the lead going into a Sunday, but he was going to crush you. I mean, he was going to make sure that you had no chance to catch him. He had such the intimidation with how powerful he is. Well, we've had a lot of different guys rise to the top, but hardly any of them have had that gravitas with the amount of intimidation they could project. That's one thing that Koepka does have because he is so steely and because he is physically intimidating. He's way more put together than almost any of these guys on tour. That's why I find it so interesting that Dustin Johnson has taken such a conservative approach the last 3 years in majors. Because if there's anybody that can intimidate somebody on a Sunday, if he had the lead, it's DJ. Because if he really lets it rip, he go out there and hit the ball 40 yards farther than you can off the tee every single time. So I find it interesting the approach he has taken. But back to what we just said, Koepka was unflappable at last year's U.S. Open and then dominant in last year's PGA Championship. This year's PGA Championship, however, he was absolutely nails the first 2 days, got himself such a huge lead, and then he basically just hung on for dear life. And it was a very striking example of how hard it is to play with that lead for 2 straight days, especially when all these other big-time names, including Dustin Johnson in that tournament, that were gunning for you. And Johnson almost caught him. I mean, he was one made putt away from really putting the pressure on Koepka.
Well,
it'll be interesting to see. It'll be exactly, and if you could have made that putt, then Koepka would have had to been playing with, a tied top the leaderboard the last couple holes. It would have been even more pressure. But I think the reason that Koepka, to answer your question initially, the reason that Koepka has won in majors more often than anywhere else is just because of the way he is. He doesn't succumb to the pressure.
Right.
But I'm going to find it fascinating because we've only seen him succumb to the pressure for one back nine out of the last 2 calendar years worth of majors. And that was in the most recent one. So does that have any carryover coming into this weekend?
I think that's a huge storyline in all of this, particularly if we get there. I also think it's an interesting study in the mentality because you talked about DJ, who could ever intimidate somebody. Wants to play safe. Well, now you go into Sunday 8 strokes off the lead or whatever it is in second place, but 8 strokes back, and you go, well, what do I care? And what do? You go out there and you just dump the course.
And what he shot like a 64, right?
Well, I don't know if it was because he did bogey, but here's what happened.
He shot in the mid-60s.
He gets within one and then does what? Bogey 17 and 18. And again, I don't even necessarily think that was Dustin Johnson cracking under the pressure. I think sometimes you go out and you make a bogey. It happens.
Especially when he's strung together so many birdies.
Clearly, Brooks Koepka felt the heat.
Totally.
And he felt the heat. Why? Because he was up so big. Like, if he had been up 1 going into that thing, it would have been a much different deal. But I'm interested to see that as well. And obviously, I'm interested to see what Tiger does. I hope that I get to watch Phil Mickelson for 4 days, not just 2. And I would love to see, obviously, some sort of miracle that he's in contention. It would be so.
I don't think it takes as much of a miracle because we talked about this 2 days ago. There's certain courses that certain guys have, you don't want to say mastered, but they know all the tricks. They know all the shots. Phil Mickelson's always played great at Pebble Beach, and so is Tiger Woods, and that's very interesting for both of those guys. I also think that Rory McIlroy caught lightning in a bottle and was the prodigy, the guy. And it's so interesting to me how we've had multiple under 30 guys in the last half a dozen years since Tiger Woods, brief comeback in 2013 and then subsequent fall from grace. We've had Rory McIlroy, Jordan Spieth, now Brooks Koepka, with Dustin Johnson dipping his toe in the water a little bit, Jason Day dipping his toe in the water a little bit, but mostly it was those first three guys that really captivated golf in just the prodigious nature of them winning at a high level at such a young age. But when Rory McIlroy broke his ankle, I really think that's lingered with him for a long time. He had the personal issues with the breakup with Caroline Wozniak, yada yada yada. But Rory has not been himself, even though he has shown flashes for a long time. Last weekend,
showed a pretty good flash.
Last weekend he was ridiculous. I mean, his Saturday round, I watched all the highlights, was jaw-dropping, and I didn't watch the Sunday round. And then you come in here and tell me he made a bogey to shoot a 61.
Yes.
So if he can parlay that, that's what I want so bad. Is I Tony Finau and Molinari and all these guys, bless their hearts, they're good. They're good. They're not this top level. And I really think that the top 12 guys right now are better than the top 12 guys have been at any time during the modern era in terms of 1 through 12, how good they are.
I agree with that.
And I want Tiger Woods walking down the fairway with Dustin Johnson. I want Brooks Koepka walking down the fairway with Rory McIlroy. Right. I hope you can intimidate Molinari if you're Tiger Woods. Of course he's going to melt when he's playing with Tiger Woods, right? But I want to see the superstars with each other.
One last question. Rory, when he went on that great, and I think he won 3 out of 4 majors or something like that, or 3 out of 5. His U.S. Open victory, when was it?
And that was a long time ago, probably 2012?
11.
Yeah.
Can you believe it? 2011 was the last time.
That's what's so crazy, because he was like 23 at that time.
The other thing, too, Brooks Koepka won at Erin Hills, his first U.S. Open in Wisconsin. 16 under. He won last year at Shinnecock. 1 over.
Yeah.
How about that? There's 17 strokes behind yourself and win them both. Maybe the course has something to do with it. Hey, 329-1899, the phone number. Call right now, 329-1899, that phone number. It is time for a Wing It Wednesday. We got wings to the Desperado Sports Tavern. We got a shirt for you, potentially, if you really knock it out of the park. Coulter's got some trivia questions. You answer a couple of trivia questions. You can get yourself elbow deep in wing sauce. That's a nice place to be. I can say that firsthand. 329-1899, the number. Do it on the other side.
Canyon River Golf Club is a must for any golfer in western Montana. Tucked away in a spectacular setting along the Clark Fork River in East Missoula, Canyon River offers one of Montana's best championship golf experiences. And Canyon River is happy to announce their new fleet of golf carts, which include the Shark Experience, an interactive GPS giving dynamic distances and touchscreen interaction to help you play your best. Plus, with Bluetooth, radio, and surround sound, you can enjoy yourself between holes, too. Book online at CanyonRiverGolfClub.com. Missoula's best golf, Canyon River.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable with. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
Springtime is the time to buy a new Polaris off-road vehicle. During the spring sales event, rebates go as high as $1,500 and financing is as low as 3.99%. Live your life wide open in a high-performance RZR. Tackle anything from mountains to mud holes on a legendary Sportsman ATV. Get more done with a hard-working Ranger, or take on any task or trail in a versatile Polaris General. Whatever you're looking for, now is the time to take your pick from the off-road's best-selling lineup. See Polaris.com or your Polaris dealer for rebates up to $1,500 and financing as low as 3.99% APR for 36 months during the Polaris Spring Sales event at Kurtz Polaris. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula and Highway 83 in Sealy. Recreate the right way with Kurtz Polaris, online at kurtzpolaris.com. Offer valid in U.S. through 5/31/19 on new 2015 through 2019 vehicles. Subject to credit approval. Offers vary by model. See dealer for details. Always wear a helmet. Never drink and ride. Hey folks, Ryan Tootell here, and I'm with Josh from the Advocates Injury Attorneys. Josh, if our listeners have been injured in an accident, how can you help?
We're here to help you after a car accident by negotiating with insurance companies, recovering lost wages if you have any, and even getting you into a rental car if you need one. Call us today for a free consultation, and we'll get started helping you right away.
If you need help, get a hold of the Advocates. Call Josh at 640-4444 or online at montanaadvocates.com. You deserve an advocate.
You're a big league fan. You expect big league service. At the Desperado, you get exactly that. With 35 flat screens, ice cold brews on tap, and Missoula's #1 wings, you're free to sit back and enjoy every pitch. This summer, make the Desperado your baseball home away from home. Cool off after work, relax on the weekends, soak in some great food and drinks, and watch your team make yet another great push for October. And hey, if yours can't do it, there's plenty of other teams and fun to go around at the Desperado Sports Tavern on South Russell across from the Y.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon, Ryan Tootell, Colton Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Sports Center. Following a junior season in which he had landed on every All-American list in the FCS, Montana senior linebacker Dante Olson continued piling up the preseason accolades Tuesday. He was named to the Athlon Sports FCS preseason All-American team, his second preseason nod so far. He was one of 8 players from the Big Sky Conference, that's the most of the FCS, to land on the Athlon Sports list, but he's the only defensive player from the league to be honored.
1 week after finishing second at the Unleash the Beast Tour stop in Green Bay, Volberg native bull rider Jess Lockwood claimed victory at the Professional Bull Riders Touring Pro Division in Deadwood, South Dakota, competing in a $21,000 purse event. The 2017 PBR World Champ collected $8,125 for the win. In the championship round, the 21-year-old Lockwood scored 91 points. That was the only bull rider to score in the final round.
A deciding Game 7 descends upon Boston for the first time since 1984 tonight as the Bruins host the St. Louis Blues in about 30 minutes. The Bruins, one of the NHL's original 6 teams, are trying to win the Stanley Cup for the 7th time, while the Blues are in search of their first ever Stanley Cup victory. They're in it for the first time at all since 1970. Last time Boston hosted a Finals Game 7, the Celtics defeated the Lakers in 1984 for the NBA title. Game, puck drop, 30 minutes, NBC TV. Cubs 10, Rockies 1. Fly the W. It's Tootell and Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. We're broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy, online at kurtzpolaris.com. If you would like to listen to the show and you're not near a radio, maybe you're out of market, maybe it's just more convenient on a device, a computer, a phone, etc. Check it out on the stream. The stream is available at 1029ESPN.com, and it is there thanks to Opportunity Bank, your local bank, your opportunity. This is the part of the week on the Wednesdays where we like to try and give some wings away if we can with a little bit of trivia. And so we go to the phones and we welcome in Andrew to the show. Andrew, how you doing?
Doing pretty good, Tootell.
Very good. I'm glad to hear this. So Coulter's got the question, so you waited for the graduate level wing earning situation to come up. So I applaud you on this. I wish you the best of luck. Where are you at right now, Andrew? You cruising around? You in Western Montana? Where are you at?
I'm on 93 heading back up to Missoula. Just got off work.
Atta man. Very good. Well, you hands-free on the Bluetooth. Okay, very good. We know that. And you're going to get yourself some questions here. Coulter, what are you like to do these things themed? Is it themed today?
It is. It's about Boston sports.
Okay. That seems pretty broad. They haven't been that successful recently.
Or historically.
Andrew, do you have any? Do you know? Do you have a rooting interest here in this game, in the Stanley Cup game tonight? Are you for anybody in this thing?
Oh, anybody that beats a Boston team's a winner in my book.
Oh, boy, this is going to be great.
Boy, some chicken wings would really hit the spot. Tummy likey. Tummy want wingy.
All right, 3 questions. You got to get 2 of them for the wings, 3 of them for the shirt. I'm a lifeline if you need it. Coulter, rock and roll.
All right, Andrew, number 1. When was the last time the city of Boston hosted a deciding Game 7 in the finals of a respective sport?
Probably would have been the Celtics.
Good start.
I don't. When were they playing the? Was that a Game 7 when Ray Allen hit that 3-pointer against Oklahoma City?
No. Well, actually, it might have been, but it wasn't in Boston.
You do have a lifeline. And I
I'm
know
going to have to use it.
I know Ryan knows the answer to this question because it's in the Sports Center.
You are on the right trail. Let's do this. Let's ask him question number 2. Let's go to question number 2. We'll come back to question number 1.
Well, the answer to question number 1 is a hint for question number 2.
Oh, okay. Well, all right, we'll use the lifeline. I mean, you said it. I'm not just running roughshod here, inserting myself.
No, you know.
The Celtics are correct. They beat the Lakers in 1984, the last Game 7 in the city of Boston.
Indeed, 35 years ago. So, 1 for 1, but you have no lifeline. But these next 2 questions have to do with that 1984 series between the Celtics and the Lakers.
Okay.
Okay, number 2. Which Boston Celtics legend was the Finals MVP that season? 1984 Finals MVP for the Boston Celtics.
Probably would have been Larry Bird.
That's as good a guess as you're going to get.
I mean,
it
you
was
used
certainly
the word
Larry
legend
Bird.
in the question.
I did.
Hey, that's some nice wings coming your way there, Andrew. You got yourself wings to the Desperado. That's a very nice get for you. Let's see if we can throw a shirt in there for you, too.
All right. For the shirt, which former Celtics Hall of Fame point guard was the head coach of that 1984 Boston Celtics team?
I do know this. Gosh, what? He's coaching against Pat Riley, correct?
He was.
Riley. I'm kicking myself because I'll know it as soon as you say it.
Well, here's what we'll say to you. You got yourself a basket of wings. So congratulations on that front, Andrew. Very well done. You give your information there to Reese in the back, and we'll get you set up with those, and we will answer the question for you. Now, Coulter, I'm not sure that I mean, the most obvious coaching legend for the Boston Celtics is Red Auerbach.
Yep.
But I believe that is well before
He was the general manager of 1984, but not the head coach. This guy was a Hall of Fame point guard for the Celtics.
Havlicek stole the ball. I don't know that he was ever the head coach of the Boston Celtics.
He was not, nor was he a point guard.
What?
John Havlicek was a 3.
Point guard. Positionless basketball in the 1950s, man. Everybody knows that. I don't know, Coulter. Who is it?
Casey Jones.
Casey Jones?
Casey Jones, Sam Jones, Bill Russell. The only 3 players that spanned all of the Celtics' 8 consecutive championships.
Wow.
Casey Jones has 8 championship rings as a player, 3 more as a coach. He's the only African-American coach in the history of the NBA to win multiple championships.
Andrew?
He's also one of the only men that's in the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame as both a player and a coach.
Impressive. A name we should be paying more attention to. Great trivia question. Andrew, give your information back there. We'll get you set up with the wings. All right, my man?
All right, outstanding.
Appreciate it. Great work.
Casey, thank you.
Casey Jones in his career,
yes,
never averaged more than 9.2 points or 4.3 assists per game.
Hey, we share that in common.
For his career, 7.4 points and 4.3 assists per game. That shows you just how good of a leader and teammate and how good he was at just controlling the game.
Mm-hmm. Running the show.
And
also, pretty nice to have Bill Russell as your teammate.
Indeed it is. Casey Jones is also, him and Sam Jones and Bill Russell, the only three guys that ever were 8-0 in the NBA Finals. Bill Russell actually did lose one, 111, lost one. So Bill Russell doesn't have the undefeated record, but Casey Jones does have the distinction. Because Bill Russell went 11 for 13 seasons, 11 championships. He lost in the finals once, didn't make it to the finals once, but Casey Jones played 8 seasons, 8 championships, 8-0.
Just run the gauntlet.
Then gets in and is the head coach, and then goes and wins 3 more championships in the 80s.
That's what we do. A bunch of guys don't even make the playoffs. Remarkable. Coulter, we got just a couple of minutes here, and I wanted to just ask you, I don't even know what to ask you. The confirmation of what everybody saw and that what we all knew as far as Kevin Durant's injury, and now he has already had surgery on the Achilles, so wasting no time in attending to that surgically. Aside from the news of this, I know that you think that there are some, significant ramifications potentially for, the off season and free agency and so forth. I'm certainly not ready to sit here and try and figure out what this means or how this goes. But does this new information and the surgery already being done do anything? Did it change anything for you in the scope of this whole saga with Kevin Durant?
Absolutely, because this could be a moment we're talking about 10 years from now as a moment that the league shifted, because I think that this completely changes all of the options for not only Kevin Durant, but for a lot of other guys as well. I think that, like you said yesterday, there's still going to be teams that are eager to sign Kevin Durant, but I think it will impact just the way that this entire summer plays out. I also think that the fact that Kevin Durant, this is one of the undertold stories about this whole saga, Kevin Durant has a player option. So Kevin Durant could opt in and stay with the Warriors for 1 year, choose to take the player option, because he's not going to be healthy until, that's the thing about an Achilles. That's why it's such a devastating injury, is the biggest freaks in the world, the guys that are the biggest physical specimens that can work the absolute hardest and grind the absolute hardest, like an Adrian Peterson, can tear their ACL and be back in less than a year. To my knowledge, there's no person that has come back full strength from a torn Achilles in less than 12 to 13 months. Kobe Bryant is one of the most maniacal workers and one of the most dedicated people to his physical conditioning of any athlete we have ever seen. And it took Kobe Bryant a full 14, 15 months to be full strength after this injury. I do think Kevin Durant has an advantage in the fact that he doesn't have much mass. That's one of the hardest parts.
And he's younger, right, than Kobe was?
He's younger than Kobe was. Yeah, Kevin Durant's 30. I think Kobe was 34 when he tore his. And Kobe had been in the league. I guess Kevin Durant came in when he was 19, but Kobe had a lot more miles on him, too, because of all the playoff runs and all these things. But I do think that where Kevin Durant goes, what happens, does he choose to opt in? Those have an impact on the league. Can he come back fully healthy? Again, I am very critical of Kevin Durant. But you never want to see a guy with his natural gifts have his career derailed. And we kind of take it for granted this day and age because the surgeries are so good, the surgeons are so good, the rehab is so intricate and detailed, and you can come back from almost – you can. That's not to say you will, but you can come back from almost any sort of injury. But there is cases still where this ruins guys' careers, and you have to just hope that this doesn't do that to Kevin Durant.
Let me ask you this. A lot has been made of the relationships that Kevin Durant has had, and again, or lack thereof, certainly with Draymond Green, but maybe with the Warriors in general, and maybe wanting to carve out, his own niche, and how much of that is first person, like actual guys, butting heads or not getting along, and how much of that is just a guy who wants to maybe go play elsewhere for whatever reason. Coulter, I think most people can relate to a situation where you had somebody that either you were indifferent to, or frankly just didn't really get along with, maybe didn't like for whatever reason, whether it was a work thing or whether it was a school thing or whatever it might be. And then something happens, some event takes place, and all of a sudden you find yourself in a different context, and all of a sudden you like this person. Maybe you thought this person was annoying in class. You find out, okay, now we got to do a group project together. You go over to the house, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, you listen to John Coltrane too? Okay. Or whatever it might be. Or something significant where all of a sudden you needed help, and that person, lo and behold, became the person that was there. All I'm saying is this. What do you think about the idea that Kevin Durant maybe wanting to leave for basketball reasons, maybe wanting to leave for personal reasons, maybe guys on the team not liking Kevin Durant, maybe it's mutual. I don't know. You know that I'm somewhat incredulous to that side of it. In any case, this happens, and a guy goes out there and tears his Achilles in a finals game, which just about everybody now is screaming, you clearly came back too soon. You clearly got bad medical advice. You shouldn't have been out there. In any case, when he comes out there, performs the way he does, and goes down the way he went down, that all of a sudden that could be a catalyst to a depth of caring and personal interest in him and from him to the guys that are around him that might be keeping him in Golden State. Do you is that insane for me to think something like that?
No, I don't. You don't know what you got till it's gone. You don't know how much you miss somebody until you don't have them anymore. I mean, all those are real human emotions that I think everybody experiences, especially when you talk about team sports. So I do think that's a real factor. There's so much unpredictability that might play out here. And the NBA offseason always intrigue. I think it has even more now, though, because you have so many superstars that are on the market. You also have LeBron James planted in L.A. under the expressed reason to draw other superstars to L.A. You have a Clippers team that finally has functional leadership, not slumlord Donald Sterling, but instead a dynamic business leader in Steve Ballmer.
He is a dynamic business leader. He's also insane. And who would have thought that Steve Ballmer would be the guy to come in and even things out in an organization?
He's insane, but he is way more appealing. Like,
of course,
in a league where almost everybody comes from disenfranchised backgrounds and the majority of the league is African American, Donald Sterling is a base nightmare to ever own a team. I mean, it's insane that he ever even was allowed to be in the culture that is the NBA. That's aside. The Clippers are a functional organization after being a laughingstock for 30 years.
Yes.
And so that gives two big market teams as real lures. The Knicks have cap space. The Brooklyn Nets have cap space. Now you got two other big market teams. The Bulls are just lying in wait. Who knows what they're going to do, but that's another big market team. Daryl Morey said that everybody on the Rockets is up for grabs, so now they have pieces to maybe get in the mix, even though they don't have a ton of cap space. And just on down the line, Anthony Davis is going to be a free agent. So I just think that there's so many different storylines and ways that this could play out. But the storyline that no one's talking about is everybody's talking about, is KD going to leave or is KD going to stay? Everybody knows Steph's going to stay. Steph's the face of the franchise. He's already been locked into a long-term deal. The thing that hasn't been talked about is Klay Thompson and Draymond Green. What are they going to do? You can talk all you want about this, that, the other thing, personalities, fit, basketball fit, friends. Are they not friends? I'm not sure. But if you know anything about Draymond Green, you know that Draymond Green is the biggest wild card in the NBA. There's no doubt he's the biggest wild card in the NBA. And if Draymond Green was to take way less money to stay in Golden State to be a part of something special, wouldn't surprise me at all. If Draymond Green took a max contract from the Detroit Pistons, it would not surprise me whatsoever.
Right.
I mean, Draymond Green, it's up for grabs for anybody. He could go straight sign a max deal with Memphis, and it wouldn't surprise me. Washington, Orlando, just because he's Draymond Green. And what happens if he goes and gets a chance to be the best player on a team? I'm not really sure. I don't really know if he even has that ability. I think he is such a byproduct of those other guys and vice versa. They need each other.
Right.
But no one's talked about that. And no one's talked about the Klay Thompson thing either. I was saying this watching the game the other night. Klay Thompson, we were arguing over Klay Thompson and Kemba Walker, third-team All-NBA. Kemba Walker averaged 26 points per game on a 30-win team. And we were arguing, well, how many points per game could Klay Thompson average on the Hornets? if he's averaging 22 points per game, playing with the second and third leading scorers in the entire league, you think he probably hit 2 more buckets if he was playing for the Hornets. But Klay Thompson's not a create his own shot type of guy, and that's what I was saying is, Klay Thompson is probably going to be around 22 to 24 points no matter what,
he's at.
Except for if he played with an absolute pass-first or pass-only guy. And the 2 examples I brought up is I think Klay Thompson could lead the NBA in scoring without playing the high usage that we're used to now in the NBA's leading scorer, like James Harden or Giannis.
Utah?
If he played with LeBron James or Ben Simmons. Klay Thompson's averaging 30 games he's playing with LeBron James because of all the shots he's going to get.
Yeah.
The best way I could say it is Klay Thompson could lead the NBA in scoring while being his team's second scoring option if the first scoring option was LeBron James. Because LeBron will average 28 a game and make sure you get 8 dimes right in the pocket and you're shooting 12 set shot threes a game. And Klay Thompson, I want that from him all day, every day.
Yeah. Well, and Klay Thompson, on Philadelphia is an intriguing situation. I was just thinking about not Rajon Rondo. Who am I thinking about in Utah?
Ricky Rubio.
Yeah, Ricky Rubio, the other double R.
Yeah, Rubio's going to be done in Utah, and they're going to make a serious run at Chris Paul. Watch.
Okay. Tootell, Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. One more break. Come back. Going to give you a great film option for your viewing. I don't know if it's pleasure, but it's worth it. Next.
Alpine Touch has been providing you with the distinct seasonings you know and love for decades. Now, Alpine Touch has something to help you unleash the freshness of all the delicious flavors you need to spice up any meal. Check out Alpine Touch's new coarse grinds, unleashing the fresh taste of the garlic pepper or all-purpose seasonings to please any nose or taste bud. Coarse grinds can be purchased by the pound at retail locations around the state or at alpinetouch.com. Use the code ESPN10 at checkout to get 10% off any online order. Alpine Touch, Montana's special spice.
Les Schwab is proud to introduce 2 of our best tires ever just in time for summer. There's our exclusive open range AT that we believe is our quietest, smoothest, and best all-season traction tire ever, or the Reputation, our exclusive high-mileage premium passenger tire. Get $50 off alignment when you purchase a set of 4 open range AT or Reputation tires. Book an appointment today at leschwab.com. Les Schwab Tires, doing the right thing matters. Cannot be combined with other offers. Limited time only. See details at leschwab.com.
On Russell, across from the fairgrounds.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Town Pump, pump it up, pump it up.
It's getting hot out there, but Town Pump's got you covered because right now Pepsi and Coke 12 packs are only $4.99. Need something stronger? Phillipsburg Brewing 4 packs are $8.49. Town Pump Food Stores, proud to be part of our community.
Town Pump, right down the road, pump it up. Oh yeah.
In Western Montana, we know shopping local matters, but we also know that you're going to pay more for the quality and customer service that comes with it. Well, not at Selway Armory. Selway Armory is locally owned with a staff of specialists that can answer any question. In addition to the expertise, though, Selway Armory also has a bigger selection and, are you ready, lower prices than the box stores. When you're in the market for firearms and accessories, save money with the experts at Selway Armory. Selway Armory, 2825 Stockyard Road, Unit E6, and online at selwayarmory.com.
Hey there, Colter Nuanez from Tootell, Nuanez 102.9 ESPN Missoula, here with Tom from Aspen Sound. Tom got me a great deal on an automatic car starter this winter. Now it's summer. What sort of stuff you guys got going on down there, Tom?
Well, Colter, coming into the summertime, we're picking up on the window tinting front. So if you need your windows tinted, give us a call. We'll get you scheduled up. Boats and ATVs are starting to come in full swing, and we're also starting to see the hot rods come out to play. Anything audio related, let us know. We'll get you taken care of.
Feel the music at Aspen Sound.
Most of my family, they never graduated high school, so I'm trying to break that barrier. My daughter, Brooklyn, was also a motivation for me to go back to school. Every day after work, went straight to school, and it paid off.
At age 26, Kareem finished his high school diploma.
I could not have done it alone. I see the future is really bright for me.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Tootell and Nuanez. All guests join the show on the Rangich Brothers RV phone line. Broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris studio on ESPN Radio in Western Montana and across the state on SWX Television. Here is Ryan Tootell and Colter Nuanez.
If you missed anything in the show, check it out on the podcast. The podcast available on the TuneIn Radio app, iTunes, Spotify, the station website. It's there thanks to the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel. Listen to whatever you would like to, whenever you would like to, on the podcast. Rate it, review it, do all that kind of stuff to it. By the way, 6 people now in custody in the Dominican Republic for the shooting of David Ortiz, which has now also been confirmed as, I mean, there's obviously an attempted murder, but it wasn't an attempted robbery gone by on it. It was an attempted hit. Just terrible. Our best to David Ortiz. Colter, tonight, Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final. Cannot wait for this game. I love this game because of the excitement of it. I love hockey. I love playoff hockey. And a Game 7 in any sport is riveting, and it is intense, and it's sort of nerve-wracking. Nothing has been more stressful that I have ever watched on a screen than the documentary Free Solo, which I watched last night. Now, I know I'm late to the table in this. I know it's been out for like a year or whatever, and the story of Alex Honnold and his climb of El Cap in Yosemite. But to see this happen and the story that goes along with it and the crew who, went out there to film him climbing with no ropes, the biggest face of rock on earth, basically, was absolutely stunning. It's spectacular to watch. I was just sweating. I mean, I was soaked. It was like I was back in the Philippines, laying in bed last night, watching this show. And, I'm not a rock climber. I can't even physically be a rock climber. It's not something I'm into, and I realize that people who are rock climbers and the dirtbags who live in their vans, and this is what they're up to and all that stuff. It's a niche thing and all that. This blows the bounds of all of that away. This is such a human story, a story of the capacity of human beings, and it is the most intense thing I've ever seen. I mean, you're sitting there, you know how it ends. And you cannot help yourself but go, why am I watching this? What are you doing? And it's just tremendous. So anyway, on the tip, we've had a couple of rock climbers on. We've talked about a couple of rock climbing films on this show before with some directors and things like that during the documentary Fistful. This one you've got to see. This is something at a whole different and a whole nother level from anything that's ever happened before.
Our collective captivation with what humans can achieve is so fascinating to me.
Yes.
I think it's why we love the spectacle that is pro sports. I'm watching this phenomenal documentary about the circus.
Oh, how about these folks, huh?
People forget, like, before there was TV and casinos and places where you can go find like really quick hitting entertainment. The circus, like when the circus rolls into town, like this is the craziest thing you ever seen. Like they got tents with tigers and elephants, like wild. But then the trapeze artists and the other people that were a part of this, our captivation with each other is so compelling to me.
To be continued. Enjoy Game 7. We'll see you tomorrow. Tootell and Nuanez. Hi, boys and girls. Ryan Tootell
and Colter Nuanez
from Tootell and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio, from your very favorite Tootell and Nuanez podcast, and now officially Gracious Mercy on television statewide.
That's right. We've been doing a radio show and a podcast since August of 2017, and now it's time for us to expand our reach into statewide television on SWX.
We're on SWX every weekday from 4 to 6 live on your televisions. It's available on channel 199 on Spectrum Cable or on 23.3 on your antenna television. And you can download the Watch SWX app and get us that way on your phones and devices as well.
And of course, we'll still be right here, 102.9 ESPN Radio from Missoula in the Bitterroot Valley. And as always, you can find the podcast, the live stream, and everything else you need, 1029ESPN.com.
Coulter, do you think that we're spreading ourselves too thin? Are we going to saturate these people and they're just going to start hating us, the inevitable backlash of the great heights to which we have now attained?
No chance. Tootell Nuanez, Montana's only statewide sports talk show.
Canyon River Golf Club is a must for any golfer in western Montana. Tucked away in a spectacular setting along the Clark Fork River in East Missoula, Canyon River offers one of Montana's best championship golf experiences. And Canyon River is happy to announce their new fleet of golf carts, which include the Shark Experience, an interactive GPS giving dynamic distances and touchscreen interaction to help you play your best. Plus, with Bluetooth, radio, and surround sound, you can enjoy yourself between holes too. Book online at CanyonRiverGolfClub.com. Missoula's best golf, Canyon River.
Treat Dad right Father's Day with the Montana Club's awesome all-you-can-eat buffet, featuring all of the slow-roasted prime rib and glazed ham Dad can put away, plus bacon, sausage, eggs, sweet treats, fresh fruit, and more. Or bring them in for dear old Dad dinner specials like osso buco and steak Sinatra. We'll even treat Dad to a free brewski on Father's Day. Father's Day all-you-can-eat buffet from 8 to 2, or palate-pleasing Papa dinner specials 3 to close. So Montana Club on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
Summer's here and the time is right for real fruit smoothies at Florence Coffee Company. Offered in flavors like strawberry, mango, peach, wild berry, and banana, and made with no artificial colors or flavors. Florence Coffee's fruit smoothies are the perfect summer treat. Enjoy a real fruit smoothie today at any Flowco locations or visit FlorenceCoffeeCo.com.
The best flavor under the big sky. Florence Coffee Company.
Hey folks, Ryan Tootell here, and I'm with Josh of the Advocates Injury Attorneys. Josh, what are people left dealing with after an accident?
Well, quite a few things, actually. We see people that are in pain, they still need to get to work, they need to raise their kids, and now they have to take time to go see doctors and other healthcare providers. They're frustrated with working with the insurance companies and getting the runaround. We'll take on the burden of dealing with the insurance companies so you can get the best settlement possible and get back to your life.
Find your advocate online at MontanaAdvocates.com. There are a lot of lawyers. You deserve an advocate.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana, KKVU HD3 Stevensville, and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula. One of them is funny, the other one is Coulter. Tootell and Nuanez, weekdays from 4 to 6 on 102.9 ESPN Radio.